Welcome to That's Joy, the podcast. I'm your host, Cece Calbanero, and I'll be sharing stories of miracles, God moments, and unpacking the truth behind what joy truly means. My friend, when God gives you a direct call on your life, be sure to answer it. Here's to answering my call together. Hello, and welcome back to That's Joy, the podcast. You guys, I am so excited about today's episode because we have a special guest that I have been longing and waiting to share with you. But before we dive into that, you know we love kicking off every episode with a little joyful noise. Joyful noise is just our version of good news. What are the good things that are happening? Let's highlight more of that. This week's good news is, I don't know if I've shared this with y'all yet, but I recently became an ambassador with True Form Fitness, and if you have not listened to the episode with Kenzie Wesp, I think one of the previous episodes, she still was Kenzie Stewart, but she is the owner of True Form, and oh my goodness, it is a Legree class, and it's basically a mix of Pilates and strength. Like, imagine Pilates and strength had a baby and you're on this machine, and it is so challenging. And I just got done doing it this morning and told Jonathan immediately how humbled I was. And I just was like, man, I feel like I could lift so much weight, but when I'm on that machine, I feel like the weakest one in the room. But for some reason, I love it. I love it so much because I know that it's challenging me, and I think that that's such a unique place to be. I don't think that we challenge ourselves enough on a day-to-day, and so when I'm in there, I'm like, man, I know that I'm not great at this, and I am being sharpened right now. And so that's my joyful noise, is doing something hard, knowing that it's doing something great for you. This week, though, we have a special guest whose name is Jessica Janzen. Just a quick little background on a personal level. Jess and I had a God moment in 2019. I had met her in a sea of people at a conference that I was working at, and she was attending back, I think it was in Canada when I was working for Personality back in 2019. And so we had met there, and then a handful of months later, we threw on another big business event in Charleston, and Jess and I were both in downtown Charleston, literally walking down Rainbow Row, and collide and see each other. And it's so funny because literally this week, my iPhone memories popped up, and it was the photo of her and I just sent it to her, and I was like, oh my goodness, this feels like so long ago, and how sweet that God had it planned all along for us to meet at that conference in a sea of thousands, meet on a random street in Charleston, and then now have the joy of working together as her being my business mentor and coach. And so I feel so grateful that I finally get to share her with you. She is a wealth of knowledge. I feel like every time I converse with her, I am more filled, I am better, I am sharper, simply by just speaking with her. To give you a professional background of who Jess is, she's a keynote speaker, a mindset coach, a philanthropist, an advocate, and something that you will see so evident throughout this conversation is that she is a joy expert. So guys, buckle up. Honestly, pull out a notepad because you're going to want to take notes on how this woman lives out her life. That's Joy. Welcome, Jessica Janzen. Okay, you guys, I am so excited and truly overjoyed to be sharing this space with someone who is quite literally a joy expert. Jessica Janzen, welcome to That's Joy.
This is joy, this moment with you and I right now. I was just like, Cece, I'm coming in hot and my world's blowing up, but let's do the thing.
Oh my goodness. The color you're wearing, the energy you're bringing, I know that there's going to be so much fire on this episode. So y'all who are listening, just like pause what you're doing and really soak in these next 40 minutes that we have together. I just want to give the peeps a little background on how Jess and I met. And honestly, gosh, it's such a God story. We share this so much about and I'd love for you to just even weigh in too. But the very first time we met was in a sea of like a couple hundred, I think. It wasn't 1,000 at that event in Canada. Um,
It was at the
yeah.
luncheon, and it was just like,
Okay.
go yes, it was like, go get the number. So we were at the VIP luncheon, and you were like racing over and all these moving parts, and I was just like, oh, what's happening?
Yes. So I was working for a personality at the time. Jess was in the crowd. We needed to grab her information. And when I met her, I was like, oh my gosh, she is like electric, so joyful. Connected her with our team for things that were happening in the background. But the true God moment that I believe was just such confirmation that we were going to be in each other's life was the moment in Charleston at the Rainbow Frickin' Wall. I don't know if y'all have ever been to Charleston before, but it's a big city. And there's this wall that's so beautiful. It's a literal rainbow. And I remember when I was on a walk with Taylor Jordan at the time, and we were
Yeah.
just like beep bopping around the city. We literally like just met on the corner of Rainbow Street. And you were probably just like shopping, attending the conference, and I was there working it. But what were you doing downtown during that time?
Well, so the conference had just wrapped up, and I'd never been to Charleston. And knowing it was so beautiful, I always love to explore as much of a city as I can. And I'm always like, I don't know when I'll be back. So let me soak it in and eat my way through the city and see all the sights. And I remember we were both crossing the street and we looked at each other, and then we looked back and we're like, ah, it's you. And we're like, oh my gosh. And I feel like they had passed somewhere at the conference, but it was so random in the middle of nowhere. No one else from the conference was around. It was like this quiet street in the middle of the day. And we were just like, and so we had exchanged kind of information. And it was just like this moment of like, oh my gosh, so cool, connect. And then we kind of just went our separate paths, but then they kind of
Yeah.
crossed again.
Yeah, yeah. By the power of Instagram, praise God. I mean, we've been connected since that was like 2019. And just so, so cool because the conference was about, I think, 3,000 to 4,000 people. And so the fact that I flew in to work that conference, Jess was attending it. And then in the random, quote unquote, we end up meeting and colliding again. And so I'm just so grateful to have you here, Jess. And I would love for you to speak to the audience just a little bit more about who you are. I feel so blessed that I know who you are, but I'd love to share if you could share just who is Jess and when and how did she find God?
Oh man, such a great question. And I'm like, who am I today? What is happening?
I
I'm just
know.
I'm just getting back from family holidays, and I was telling Cece I drove 3 hours to an airport, then I was on a flight for 5 hours and 36 minutes, and my cell phone landed in the bottom of a pool. And so I'm so discombobulated that I'm like, wait, what's happening? Where am I? What day of the week is it? And so I think it's always so interesting when someone asks you that question. I usually have such a canned answer, and I'm
Mm,
like, who am I? What is happening? And it's like, what is it that I want to share with the world? And I mean, I can share the typical things. I'm a wife, I'm a mama. I married my soulmate, who I'm so fortunate to know. I have three incredible babies, two earthside, one up in heaven. I'm a daughter friend, I'm a small business owner. I call myself a joy expert. I just redid my website, and that's one of my titles. I'm a keynote speaker and a coach. But I think at the heart of the matter, like the most simplest, truest form is that I'm somebody that just wants to help other people live big, joyful, grand, incredible, abundant lives. Like that's the underlying, whether it's with my kids and with my husband, with my nearest and dearest friends, or with a complete stranger who's maybe picking up a coffee at a coffee shop or traveling in an airport that just needs like a slice of joy and just a little bit of goodness. That's who I am.
that is so good. And you guys, if you are curious to know a little bit more, like your Instagram stories display this so well because I feel like you just show up as you are no matter where you are. Like even for your latest keynote and you in the car like jamming out, I was like, that's how she is like on and offline. Like that's just so cool that you show up in that way, you know?
And we were just on this family holiday, and we were with my mom and dad and my brothers, and we were riding this cute little trolley so you can hop on and hop off this trolley. And the driver was incredible. Like I was just like, oh, this guy is somebody who brings the dang joy. Like he saw that there was a lot of kids, so he played wheels in the bus, and I'm singing at the top of my lungs. And then he started playing some other music. And I'm like, it's my dad's 69th birthday. Like, let's sing happy birthday. And the bus sings is happy birthday. And then there was another song, keep on rocking in the free world. I start singing that. And my mom, like, these people are like, who is this whack job? And my mom goes to the people in front of her. She goes, and she's not even drunk. This is just who actually.
That is amazing. Oh my gosh. Just a dose of who you are.
Yeah.
But when it came to season 3, I mean, I can't believe that Sure the podcast is in season 3. I wanted to be that much more intentional with inviting guests who embodied joy, who lived this out. And I think what's so cool about the topic of joy is that there are so many different perspectives on it. I mean, based off of personal experiences. And when I thought about joy experts, like Jess was the first to come to mind, and I was like, oh, shoot, I need to finish her book because I have been that person, you guys, who has started a book and stopped a book for too long. And 2024 is the year where I complete books monthly. And so, February, I was committed and I was like, I want to finish Jess's book. So, I finished that last month. And y'all, if you want a book on how to live out more joy in your own life, you need to order a copy of Jess's book because she writes how she speaks, and that is the best type of book that I love reading, where I feel like you're like talking to me, you know? But
Mhm.
all that to say, your book, I mean, you're an author of a book called Bring the Joy. Your Instagram is a billboard of joy and how you live your life. And so much of that, how you coach, how you show up as a friend, as a mama, is the practical of like, what are tactical things that you can do to live a life with joy? And so I know that so many are curious up to this point listening. Like, Jess, do you mind sharing with everyone, how did your joy come to be?
Get asked this question, like, have you always been this way? And if I'm being completely honest, I don't know how to answer that. And I think if I look back, like I've always been like a happy, positive little girl. I think we talk about toxic positivity. And so I don't want to ever get those confused where like everything's going to be great. And it's like, meanwhile, you're in like the worst circumstances and, wading through a really tough season. But it doesn't mean that you can't have joy. And I was trying to pull out these instances. What I think is the coolest part about where I am now, I turned 40 this year in August, which is like, a kind of a big milestone because I remember 40 and you're like, oh my gosh, it's so old. And I'm like, do I look 40? Because I sure don't feel
You
like
do not look 40. Okay. People look at her Instagram. She looks like she's literally 30.
Well, thank you. It's also a little bit of Botox and a little filler. So let's just call it what it is, and then some good makeup and some great lighting. So there are those things. But I feel like the older I get, the freer I get. And
Mm.
because I become freer, I feel like I can access joy easier. And so I think joy has always been a component in my life. And I was reflecting on this when I was with my family. My mom had given us ornaments and she had peace, love, and joy. I have two brothers. And she gave my little brother the peace ornament, and he is our peacemaker. She
Mm.
gave my older brother love, and she gave me joy. And I remember being pissed. Like I was young at the time, being pissed because I remember the Bible verse where it was like, peace, love, and joy, and the greatest of these is love. I was like, I'm not the greatest. And like this is the competitiveness in me.
Yeah.
And that's like, how crazy is it that I think my mom almost kind of like, was part of this platform of like, no, you are joy. Like you can bring lightness, light, um, grace, love, abundance, what I would call joy, not happiness, but joy to really tough things. And that's where I really learned to thrive is, okay, no matter what problem we're faced with, how do we see what's possible and make the best out of whatever we're given? We don't always get to
Mm.
choose our circumstances, but we do get to choose our response. And so I become an expert in just getting really good at choosing my response. And as somebody that's had severe mental health struggles and challenges, and I know how it feels to sit in the dark, how it feels to go, what's the point of me being here? And to see that I'm through the other side, and that when I do get suicidal ideations, or when it does get really dark, or when I want to stay stuck, I know that there's a better way out. And so then I just want to help other people find that joy, find that goodness, the light, the abundance. And so I wouldn't say I've always been like this. I feel like this has been a lifelong journey and I will continue to journey up. Like I would never have sung out loud on a bus to a song that I really don't know the lyrics to at the top of my lungs when I'm completely tone deaf. I have no pitch. Like I'm horrible, horrible. I have no musical talent whatsoever, even though I love a microphone and give it to me and I'll talk your ear off all day long. But I don't know if I would have done that 20 years ago for fear of what others would have thought of me. But for me, it is just being free and alive and silly and goofy. And I don't think that's the answer. I don't think everyone has to be like, oh, when you're sitting in a random trolley or bus, you have to sing at the top of your lungs and look like you're drunk. I don't think that's the answer. I think joy looks differently for each one of us. But for me, this full authentic version, and it's like, how do we help others step into the authentic version of them to access more joy? That's the piece that I've learned that has come with time and age and wisdom and freedom of just letting go what others think of me.
That's so good. And thank you for sharing that too. Just like being vulnerable, because I think so often people can look at the most quote unquote joyous people and think that they haven't gone through hard things. But your book is quite literally a display of all of the different hard things that you have journeyed through in this life so far. And even speaking to like your marriage and your personal just valleys that you've entered. And then you've also mentioned at the top of the episode that you have one kiddo who's in heaven. Like, those are not easy and light things that the world would ever point to as joy, but somehow you've found to latch on, to lean in, and to find the joy and be the joy. And that's what I love so much about you. I'm curious to know, like, you shared this a little bit about your story with Lewiston in the book, but when you were in the hospital and you found out more about his diagnosis, would you just speak to that a little bit? Because I'm curious, like, what was that light switch for you? Where the song that we all know and love, shout out Justin Timberlake, like, I
Yes.
just want you to go in on that for a second so that people could just hear more about your heart behind those moments.
Mhm. So our second child was diagnosed on August 5th, 2016 with a rare genetic disease called spinal muscular atrophy. And my assumption, which my dad says never make an assumption or assume, makes an ass out of you and me, but my assumption would be that majority of the people, probably 95 to 98% of the people listening to this episode will have never heard of SMA, spinal muscular atrophy. So it's a rare genetic disease. And when we got this diagnosis from our doctor, our little guy Lewiston was about 2.5 months of age. We had been in the hospital in Winnipeg, then in the hospital in Calgary, had done all these tests. When they delivered the news, hey, we're really sorry your son has SMA, I was like, okay, no big deal. I had been helping a family that I met through church. Um, in at Sunday school. I never volunteered in Sunday school, but that Sunday they needed someone. They were short staff. I had done my criminal record check. I was going to a really big church at the time. And I was in this classroom and I met this little boy, and then I met his sister, and they both were living with spinal muscular atrophy. So for the last 9 years, prior to having my own children, I had cared for, helped this family. We had just finished fundraising for over $44,000,
Wow.
help them replace their van. They needed a wheelchair accessible van, and everything just with accessibility, and kind of wheelchairs and medical equipment. It's just so expensive. And then there's always things that aren't covered by insurance or aren't covered by the government. And so these families are left to pick up these insane tabs. And their van wouldn't heat, their ramp wouldn't work. So kids would either get stuck in the van or stuck outside in the cold. And I was just like, man, there's a better way to do this. So I was really familiar with the disease, knowing both of these kids, Ishan and Shania. And so when the doctor delivered that news, I actually was like totally fine. I was like, okay, like a little bit sucky, like, oh, this is nuts. And Ishan and Shania, when I met them, were 4 and 6. At this point, they're in high school. So they're living these full, abundant lives. Cognitively, they're not affected. They're sharp as whips. They're brilliant. They're hilarious. And so in my head, I'm playing through, oh, like, okay, well, the good news is I know if you're in a wheelchair when you go to Disney, you can jump the line. I was like, oh, I'm going to get like the blue handicap thing. So I'm going to get prime parking. And I was like, okay, we live in a bungalow. We've got a few steps up, but we can buy a portable ramp. Like, I'm not panicked at all.
Mm.
Then what the pediatric neurologist says next changed my life and our family's lives forever. She says, Jessica, Ronnie, I'm really sorry, but it's SMA type 1. And when she said that, like it still hadn't registered. And what she said next was like the blow that no parent wants to hear. She goes, there's no cure, there's no treatment. We don't believe he'll make his first birthday.
Mm.
Our role in his care will just be to keep him comfortable. And like that for me, like shattered me, crushed me, fell to the floor. You're weeping, you're sobbing. I don't remember them leaving the room. There's so many parts I think that I've just blocked out. And I don't know how long I was there for. I just remember sitting on the floor, my hands on either side of me, and it was like cold and dark. And I'd had the blinds drawn because it was a beautiful sunny day. And I'd been in this position because we had done all these testing and all these, different things to figure out, try and know what was wrong with our son. Why was he limp? What was going on with him? I was like, maybe he's just tired, like he hadn't had enough sleep, when we're like delusional, we're like, oh, if you just have a good night's sleep, everything will be better tonight. So I was like, okay, the blinds are drawn and maybe he just gets enough sleep and he'll be fine.
Mm.
And the blinds were drawn and he had gotten enough sleep and he wasn't going to be fine. And so eventually you have to pick yourself up off the floor. And my husband and I went for a walk. I just remember holding his hand and we had fought really hard for marriage. I said, this will either make us or break us. And I said, we just have to bring the joy to our son's life. And I remember he looked at me like I was somebody trying to land on Jupiter and start a new cult. He was like, sorry, what? I was like, yeah, I just had this nudge. I was like, we just have to bring the joy. And he goes, you want to bring the joy to Lewison's life while he's dying in the hospital? Like, what?
Mm.
And he goes, how do you want to do that? And I remember saying, I don't know how, but we'll figure it out along the way. And for us, that snowballed into we couldn't leave the hospital. We couldn't change the circumstances. We couldn't find, an instant cure, instant treatment. So it was like, okay, well, what is within our control? Okay, well, how the hospital room feels, what it smells like, what it looks like, the energy that you'd walk into. And so we had a Bluetooth speaker and my girlfriend came in with our two little girls. Our daughters were 15 months old, 16 months old at the time. Toddlers are so awkward and dance so funny and cute. And they started bebopping to this song. I just remember that was one of the most significant moments where it just shifted something inside of us. We're like, oh, that felt good. Everything else felt terrible. Like the diagnosis, the news, the heaviness, the fact that like a doctor would come in, but they wouldn't have answers. They wouldn't have a solution, or it wasn't like, hey, we can try this medication. Hey, we can try this treatment. Hey, we can do this physiotherapy. Hey, we can do these exercises to fix it. And so it was just for me a lesson in like, okay, we can't change the circumstances, but we can choose our response. We can choose a reaction. And the outcome that I wanted was a beautiful life for my child.
Yeah.
And it looked different than what I thought it would be. We picture watching our kids grow up and them having kids and being at their weddings and their graduations and taking them to kindergarten and all these milestone moments. And I was like, if this is all I'm given, I got to make it count. And so it just became this really powerful piece of like, how do we make these moments count? And it was just every little nudge. And so every day we danced to Can't Stop the Feeling by Justin Timberlake. And it was to the point where people would come in looking forward to being in our room, like
Wow.
nurses that weren't assigned to us, unit clerks. We had I remember this guy so clearly. He was bald, he had glasses, he was head of hospital maintenance. And I have a video of him on my phone to this day. And that guy could dance. I was like, you have moves like Jagger. Like, I was like, okay. I just remember people would just come in and dance. And it was like that small act of moving for a few minutes helped us show up better. And
Mm.
I just wondered, like, I was like, man, this works. This is it. And so the doctors were right. He didn't make his first birthday. He passed 3 days shy of a 6 month kind of milestone. And it was not the way I would have chosen to have our story written, but it was such a powerful piece in helping me live differently, bigger, bolder, better. And so, as hard as it is, I also say it's one of the best things that's helped me. And I have a heck of a lot more dance parties now because I just know how precious life is and I don't want to waste what's gifted to me.
That's so good, Jess. Thank you for sharing that. I'm sure that every time just hits different in a new way when you share that story. And so I don't take it lightly that you're opening up your heart and just being vulnerable with That's Joy's community to share that. Because I know that on the other end, maybe it's not somebody's son, but somebody close to them who's walking through a hard valley and you don't know how much longer you have with them. I think what's so incredibly powerful about you is your perspective. Like it's just unmatched. And I think that what I'm like, as you're sharing the story, and this isn't the first time I'm hearing it, like I shared, I read the book and I was in tears on the plane during the last couple pages, seeing your letter to Lewiston for his first birthday, and just all of those moments where you're counting it as joy in such a unique way. I'm like, holy smokes, this woman has a corrective lens over her life that is steering people to just gain more clarity on what it's truly all about. And I think that that's so much of where your presence is and what God is doing in and through you today. Like what you went through continues to be spoken through how you show up and how you share. And I think every day you choose to hop on stories, you choose to put up another post, it's an opportunity for somebody in your community, heck, maybe now somebody in my community who gets to come across that and just get like a clear vision to how they're supposed to see. And I know this to be true because I've been a recipient of that. You hopped on stories. I mean, you probably don't even know this because it's so random to you potentially, but you hop on stories and you're in your kitchen and you're like, I'm grateful for these dirty dishes because there's a moment in time where I was praying to just exchange lives with someone who just had a pile of dirty dishes than rather than being in the hospital with your son who is on their last days, you know? And that perspective, like, holy moly, if we can just not even get the whole thing, but like a fraction of it, how much it could change our lives, you know? And I'm curious to know, like, for someone who has joy leading their life, it seems like the Lord gave you a double dose. I say that so often for myself too, where I'm like, there were some moments where I'm like, it makes no sense. I don't know. And I just think that my mission is to tell more people about it. Like that's what I think the purpose is, you know? But for our friends who are listening, who are struggling for that reach, I'm curious to know too, like what's your best piece of advice when it comes to reaching and finding that?
Whoa. Oh man, it's like, and I'm on the verge of tears. So like I think just being really open and vulnerable. So you were like, oh man, you look so nice. I'm wearing this really bright coral blazer. I had finished a keynote this morning. I have this insane goal of 50 keynotes this year. And my sixth and seventh keynote, I crushed. Like I walked out of there, chest held high, puffed, like, yes, I'm exactly where I'm meant to be. This is incredible. Like I nailed it. I'm going to be the world's best speaker and I'm changing lives and my story matters. And I finished mine this morning and I was like, I don't know if I can swear, but I was like, you're a piece of shit. That was terrible. You totally missed the moment. I was going through every single thing. Oh, you fumbled here. This didn't go right. And it's so easy just to hook on to all of the things that aren't working. It's so easy to like find the evidence of what's sucking. And I think if you were to look at me, and even if you were to look at my Instagram feed, you're like, oh my gosh, your life's amazing and it's so perfect. And like, gosh, it's just epic. And it is. But that doesn't escape me from the hard things. And so even myself, I have spent the majority of the day beating myself up about how I missed the mark. I didn't deliver the way I wanted to, about how it wasn't good enough, about how I suck. And that's all of the stuff that robs you of joy. Like
Mm.
it does. I was paid to be on a stage to bring a message. They asked for somebody different. It was a tough crowd, 95% male in the oil and gas industry. So they went completely like on a different path than what they've done, which is my specialty and my favorite audience to speak to when they're like, why are you here? How do you relate to a conference? Like it's my favorite. And I was like, I don't think I landed the plane. I don't know if anyone got anything out of it. And I think what's really easy for us is like, if you're lacking in joy, I would look at why. And
Mm.
I think it's because you're focused on all of the stuff that's not working. And the more we look for the things, the more you will find. And I talk about this in my keynote and I apply this in my own life. It's like, are you looking for the evidence of what's working or what's not working? Because whatever you look for will be more of what you get. And that's the neuroscience behind how our brains work. 60,000 thoughts a day, about 80 to 90% of them are repetitive. Not all of them serve us, not all of them true. And we're also processing all of this data, what we see, what we taste, what we touch, what we hear, what we smell. And so our brain's working all day, and what we feed it will be what it then hooks onto and looks for more of. So I've just gotten really damn good at looking for the joy. I
Mm.
call it joy starters. It's like, where's the joy? Oh shit, I had a coffee. I mean, it's cold, but I was like, dang, I ran downstairs. My doorbell just rang. I don't know if you're keeping that in or not. I was like, great, I haven't had I'm grabbing the good. I haven't had leftover coffee. Joy, K moment. There it is, locked and loaded. What we look for and what we consume and what we put in is going to be what we get out. And so I'd say, like, are you looking for the joy? Are you looking for all the things that aren't working or hard or sucky? And trust me, I can go down that list of all of the stuff that isn't right, didn't work, is going terribly in my life. I could go all day. Just thank God I've strengthened my brain. I believe the brain is a muscle. It's one of the biggest things. It consumes 30% of our energy. So what we fuel it with, both like with food and then with what we consume, both who we're hanging out with, the energy, what podcasts we're listening to, what TV shows we're watching, what books we're reading, it all matters. And I think what sets the journey apart for myself and for those that have maybe going, I need more joy and I don't even know where to start, it is like looking for the smallest of things. And
Mm.
those small things are like a hot cup of coffee. It's like, oh man, I have a dishwasher that I get to unload and load. There's food in the fridge. I have a job. Is it the dream job that I have? No, but I've got it and I'm able to pay my bills. Like, there are always blessings. There are always incredible things, but it's just like, what are we choosing to focus on? And that has become my superpower, is to look for the joy, find the joyful moments, bring the joy. Sometimes I tell people, sometimes you have to be the dang joy, because it might be like there's no joy around. It is dark, it is dreary, it is hard, it is heavy. I'm like, okay, if it's dark, dreary, hard, and heavy, then I'm going to be the light. Look at, I'm wearing coral. It's bright. Okay, I'm going to high kick. Let's sing a song. Let's move our bodies. And that's the piece that if you are struggling with, it is shift your perspective and it is start looking for what you can control and what is right in front of you that is a blessing. And if you can cultivate that list, which I think really comes from learning to have gratitude, it's like that will be a platform that will catapult you to a level you didn't even know possible.
Come on. That whole thing is a keynote in itself. I mean, gosh, I love that you shared so much about it being a muscle and like how our brains are a muscle, just reminding me of that. Cause I'm like, man, if you don't have that, that's something you can get better at. Just like you go to the gym to, increase the muscles within your biceps. You got to do like different movements to target different areas of that bicep, right? In the same breath, we could look at joy in that way and how you just displayed multiple different ways of the things that you go through throughout your day to day, your coffee, your podcast, your work, what you're reading, all of those things are things that you actually can control. And what are you doing about it? Are you infusing joy into those moments and just being hyper aware that you do have control over those things? It reminds me, everything that you're sharing reminds me of that I forget who founded it, but that whole idea of if you look outside or look around you right now and look for everything that is brown for 3 seconds, ready, set, go. Okay, now what was red? You don't know what was red because you're so focused on the brown all around you, right? It's that same concept. And so if the brown are all the terrible things, friends, the hard things, the things that we can't control, the government, politics, gas prices, food prices, all of those things that people are shouting about and complaining about, if we focus on those things, that'll be the only thing that we see. But if we are the people who are set apart, who are finding joy starters, finding those red pockets of saying, I'm going to find it. I'm going to find it today, period. Then I believe that your life will look and feel different. And I love that Jess, you shared all of that because gosh, it's just so true. And it leads me to just kind of the next place where I want to take us. I mean, I for a lot of y'all don't know this because I've only shared it couple of times on my Instagram stories, but I reached out to Jess probably end of Jan, mid Jan. And I was like, don't know if you are even willing, but holy moly, the Lord has laid you on my heart to be a mentor. And I have not reached out to anyone like this before. So I'm just gonna, you guys, on the background, I'm like, oh crap, she can think I'm crazy. She could think no way.
Right. See, these are all the thoughts that you're thinking, and not all of them are true.
Exactly. And I'm like, but
Yep.
you know what? I'm gonna shoot my shot anyway. And so I literally sent you a voice note on Instagram and I was explaining all this, not sure if you're willing, able, whatever. And by the grace of God, you were. You were looking for someone to kind of mentor. And I am so grateful to now be a recipient of what Jess's coaching is like for her life and business coaching. And I feel so grateful, y'all. There's so much to this that I know will be like my keynote at the end of this year of just us working hand in hand month after month. It's only been 3, but I'm already seeing the fruit of locking arms with someone who's a couple miles ahead of you, like a handful of miles. You're a lot of
We're
miles.
not, we're not counting. And
We're not
yes, and yes.
but there's so much power in that, right? So that's a note for some girl listening right now who's 16, who's like, dang, I want a mentor. You don't have to find your next Jess who's already on stages of keynotes and stuff, but who's someone who's a senior at your high school that you really admire, that you can lock arms with and say, hey, do you mind just like meeting me on Sundays after church and we can go for a walk and just talk about life and breathe life into each other? Like it could look like that to start. But I'm so grateful now because I'm in a place where I'm cultivating so much of what God is calling me to. And it feels like I'm at the beginning of my race. This year feels like the gun just went off. And I'm like, all right, my shoes are strapped. I'm ready to go. God, where do you want me to go? And Jess has been that guide in a lot of ways of like, okay, these are the areas and routes where you can go. This is where it gets a little bit trippy over here. So maybe you dodge that and go this direction. And Jess, I'm just so curious to know from your perspective, you're so gifted at this. I know we've been only working with each other for a bit, but from what I have experienced already, I'm just so curious to know, because I don't know if I've asked you this personally, as far as everything goes with your life, writing, speaking, coaching, is this something that you've always envisioned? And was that clear from God that this is what you were going to do?
So really funny that you asked that. I share this story a little bit, but ever since I was a little girl, so I grew up on a farm in rural Manitoba for all you USers, because I feel like your audience is probably fairly big US based, not Canadian
Yeah.
based. So it's the center province of Canada. It's right above North Dakota, and it's flat. It's bald prairie. Like there's nothing to it. Like the joke is you can watch your dog run away for 3 days. I remember growing up on my parents' farm, like hating it. Like, oh, like we only had 4 channels. We had these bunny ears, and we had one TV in our house. And, whatever my dad watched was kind of like what we had to watch. And so when I would get these random pockets or these moments, I wanted to be famous. I don't know why. That was just like my wiring. So I would make up these pretend shows, and I had this film crew that would follow me around as I did my chores. I had a cooking show in the kitchen. So we had these wall ovens, and I pretend that the wall ovens were like the cameras. And so I've always been like, okay, welcome to my cooking show, or like, telling the camera about what I'm doing, which is crazy because now there's Instagram, and I'm like, I do have a show. It's called Instagram. And I show up and share stories and just record my everyday. And there's a bunch of fun things that we're working on for later this year. And so I remember, in high school, I was most likely voted to become a motivational speaker. Hilarious. That's what I do now. And I remember in my 20s telling my mom, like, Mom, I really want to speak. And right before Lewison was born, I was like, Mom, I know I want to speak. Like, I love teaching and educating and motivating. I love inspiring people. And my mom goes to me, she's like, Jess, it's great, but like most people that speak, like they've climbed Mount Everest or they've won Olympic medals, like they have a story to tell. Like, what would you tell them, like how you're doing it? And some of the greatest speakers that I know have not climbed Mount Everest, have not won an Olympic gold medal. They're incredible speakers, motivational experts, leaders in their industries because they're amazing storytellers, and they help you think differently. And I think that's for me what was about is like, I just want to help people shift their perspective, like we talked about, and give them and share some of the most practical things that have worked in my life for their life. Because I'm like, I'm not the only one struggling with this stuff. And I mean, fast forward, Lewiston dies. We have started a charity foundation in his honor called Love for Lewiston. We've raised $2.5 million, changed healthcare, and helped made our world more accessible from coast to coast here in Canada.
Come
And I'm like,
on, that is not a light. Like, let's just celebrate that.
let's just, yeah, celebrate that moment. I know as females, we're like, well, I mean, it's okay. I still have this and this, right? I still
Right.
haven't my New York Times bestseller, whatever. But like, I won't win an Olympic gold medal. I have no desire to climb Everest. Like I'm not wired that way. I knew I wanted to share stories from a stage, and I knew I wanted to inspire people. And I started coaching when I was in high school. I started coaching juniors, and I have loved, when I think about a great coach, I think about the NFL, and I look at the NFL coaches, and their role is to bring out the best in their players. They're not playing the game for them. They're not winning the Super Bowl by giving them the perfect pass or helping them get their touchdown. They are equipping their players and pulling out the best, bringing in the best experts, the best workout, the best nutrition, like all of these pieces. And that's what I've loved, because I think so often many people have the tools and they have it all, but they forget the power inside of them. And great coaches remind their players of how powerful they are, and they hold the belief when the player stops having the belief. 92% of people will set goals and not achieve them. But I think that people that are achieving goals have great coaches, whether it's an actual coach or it's a great community or cheerleaders, but it's people that will hold the belief. And for me, that was like, I just wanted to help people and help them have this belief in themselves. And when you can have relentless belief, that's where you can look for the evidence and find that it's possible. And so there's always been a part of me that loves coaching and pulling out the best in people. I love, like, will be the loudest. I will cheer you on. I just love that, because I'm like, what an opportunity to help witness in someone's greatest moments of their life. Like, that is such a freaking privilege. And so I think it's unfolded totally differently than I thought. In terms of having a show, like I said, I've got Instagram. I don't have my own reality TV show, and I probably don't ever want one. I have all these big dreams, but it's just so incredible that there's all of these unlimited possibilities, and they're happening. They look a little different than what I thought they would, but I feel like very much so the pain that we've experienced has been rocket fuel to give me an incredible platform to help encourage other women, men, blaze a trail and live a life on purpose that matters.
Come on. As you're speaking, I'm just like, from glory to glory, Lord. Like, we're just taking us to the next best place. And what I'm hearing so much of what you share too is like, you had vision then, like when you were coaching in high school. I mean, friends, I didn't know that she did that. And I just recommended that you do find someone who does that, like, that's not a coincidence, but you had so much vision then. And I think that that's just incredible to see that you have held on to that throughout the years. And I know that it's really cool that we've cultivated a community where there are girls who are 13, 14, 15 years old listening to this platform. And
Wow.
there are women who are 38, 42 who also write in notes. And I want you to speak to them for a second too, Jess, just because you're right there celebrating 40. Like, you still have vision today. I'd love to hear if you're willing to share, like, what's a dream that's on your heart today as you look forward to the next 40?
In one sense, like, I could beat myself up and be like, oh my gosh, you're such a piece of, you haven't accomplished all of these things. And in another sense, I can look at the list of all the joy, all the incredible moments, be like, look at the life you've built. Whoa, whoa. And I know people that would give anything to be able to be in this moment, to have the family that I have, the home that I have, the opportunities, the access. And this didn't just fall in my lap. This is hard work. It is dedication. I talk about the hard work of joy. I don't think joy just is like, oh, this is awesome, it just happens. This is a life. This is like a muscle. This is like going to the gym and eating the protein shakes and doing all the things that necessarily other people aren't willing to put the time in to do. That's what this is. And so in one sense, I'm like, gosh, I wish I was further along. In another sense, I'm like, whoa, you're doing the things that you once dreamed of. I think like letting go of the timeline, but allowing myself to continue to dream the big dreams. I have I was putting together kind of 8 things that I really wanted to accomplish this year. There's like a list of 8 to probably 12 things. One was for me being debt free. I mean, just the suffocating like pressure of finances as a small business owner. Both mine and my husband's businesses were affected hard by COVID. That monkey around your back, and I like to spend money and travel and do all the things. And so I'm like, okay, like there's this like fine balance, and you want to give your kids all the opportunities, you know what I mean? And I am not Dave Ramsey. I will not hunker down and just eat rice and beans. I still like my freaking kale salad and a green juice that costs $14 dang. So, you know, there's some of those moments, but some of the more powerful big things is my second book is called The Hard Work of Joy. The title can change, but I would love to find a publisher. I have been working on one of the goals that I know I shared with you about getting Justin Timberlake to my son's birthday party. Every year we celebrate Lewison's birthday party. That was like the launch pad for not sitting in our pity party, but having a dance party and using our circumstances for good and to change the outcome. And so every year we've invited him and I've harassed him, and I've like messaged his mom and Jessica Biel and you name it. People like, I knew a dancer who once danced for his cousins, uncles, brothers, sister's friend. Like I'll reach out to them, and it's fallen flat. But I mean, that to be able to have Justin Timberlake incorporated into this birthday party, which is a dance party in celebration, and really started from that song. That would be a massive goal, which is insane and crazy. And people, I think, look at me like I'm literally smoking something or, on something. We're like,
Right.
okay, good luck. And I was like, you know what? I've been working on this goal for 8 years. And when it does happen, I cannot wait to celebrate and being like, this was a goal that was, it took me 11 years, or maybe this is the year it happens. It took me 8 years of having this belief, 8 years of staying the course. And so I feel so privileged I can dream really big. And then I like a New York Times bestseller, that would be an incredible thing. But I have a TED talk on there. And then there's just like these small moments of, I both want to take my mom and dad on trips and just treat them because life is precious. They both turn 69. They'll be 70 next year. And I don't know how much more time I'm going to be gifted with them. And that's always been on my heart, to be able to like those moments, and not a trip where I'm like, hey mom, we should go on a trip. And also, can you bring your credit card and pay for it? Like, hey mom, like we're going on a trip. I just need you to be at the airport, your flight, everything's taken care of. She really wants to go on this Rocky Mountain. We have this thing called the Rocky Mountaineer, and it goes through the Rockies where I live now in Calgary. And it's a stunning trip, but it is a pretty hefty price tag. So I love that I keep dreaming, and I've actually had to go to therapy with my husband over this, and our therapist. So I have ADHD, neurodivergent. Like my dream, like I could go on. We could talk about dreams. Like we could just go. And it's actually really exhausting and scary for my husband because I am such a big dreamer. And it's been a challenge in our marriage. And I share that because I think some partners maybe haven't gotten to the state where your partner will be like, that's impossible. There's no way that's going to happen. And you think that they're crushing your dreams or maybe not in supportive. My husband was terrified that he'd disappoint me, terrified that he won't be able to make them happen. And this is the beautiful thing about how my brain works, is I'm looking for dopamine. So with ADHD, you're lacking kind of that dopamine. So you're constantly looking for it in a lot of ways. And part of that is in your dreams, of just like having these insane dreams. Like, I'm going to do this thing. I'm building this wellness facility and this retreat, and we're going to have all these people and change all these lives, all these things. And everyone's like, whoa, what is happening? Like, I'm trying to get through a Tuesday. And our therapist said, don't worry about the how, Ronnie. Just hold the space that her dreams are possible. And that's been a superpower of mine. And I think, like, as we have these dreams surface up in our lives, I just want to encourage the women on here, whether you're 14, you're 34, or you're 44 or 74, if you're listening, is like, if you have a dream, don't diminish it. Don't try to make it smaller than it is. Say it out loud, breathe life into it, and don't worry about the how. The how will figure itself out, but it really stems from belief, and that has been my superpower. And so the list is long, my friends, for what's going to happen just in life. And I've just learned not to downplay them or to be like, oh, like, I don't want to say that sounds stupid, or I don't want people to think I'm self-absorbed or stuck up or not humble or all these things. I just learned to be like, oh man, you want to hear about my dreams? How much time do you got? Some of them are crazy.
Oh, come on.
And I hope more women step into that, because it's a really fun thing to allow your brain to be like, what would be possible if? It's a really cool place. And that brings you more joy, just allowing your brain to play it out.
Come on. Everything that you just shared too, like, gosh, the amount of vision that she has, y'all. Again, we don't need the whole thing. If that sounds overwhelming to you, take 2% of it and think about that one thing that keeps rattling your heart that you know you can't shake, and just do that. Like, just do that one thing, because I promise you, your life will, you'll just be so much more grateful that you tried. And something that I received from Jess from one of our recent conversations and coaching calls is that you double asked me. And I don't think you knew what it did for me, but there was a number that I was marching towards as far as finances go. I've shared a little bit about, just the financial journey that we have been on in the last year too. And by we, I mean me, because Jonathan's so wise with his finances and I'm working on it. But
Yeah, we're both like, okay, we have a long way to go. Yeah.
literally, literally. And as you're describing ADHD and all of that, I'm like self-diagnosing myself now.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so anyhow, all of that to say, I'm like, man, I was sharing just some of my goals with Jess and writing things down. And similar to what she's sharing, I think that I admire Jess so much because I find myself so similar to her. There are a lot of qualities that I'm like, man, I think like that, or man, I believe that too. And as you're sharing, I have massive things that I've never shared anywhere. You've heard them because you not forced me, but you're like, you better be honest with me or this isn't going to work. So I spewed it out and told you, and I haven't even told a lot of my close friends some of these numbers. But when I said it, I was pooping my pants as I said it, because I was like, oh my gosh, I'm literally about to say this out loud. Like, I know that from where I am right now to where that is feels kind of like the impossible in between.
It's like you're like, if I say this out loud and there's no way it can happen.
Right, right, exactly. But me speaking those very things out loud is actually breathing life and belief into it. And I think that that's actually what like enlightens God. And he wants us to believe that he could do it, and we could do it with him. And so I said the number and you asked, do you believe it? And I said, yes. And then you paused and you said, do you really believe it, Cece? And I was like, mm, coming for my stomach, like it's coming out of my mouth. Shoot, do I believe it? And I had a moment where 1 second felt like 15. And I just had a moment where I was like, do I believe it? And I was like, frick, yes. Like with everything in me, I have to choose yes. I don't know how, like Jess just said, there's so much of the how that like, you guys, it can overwhelm us. The how can become such like a boulder coming down on a steep hill after us, right? But we can't allow the how to stop us. And so I just, with full belief, was like, yes, I'm believing in this number. And now I'm seeing doors open. I'm seeing things shift. Last month, I was trying to build my Instagram presence, and that was my big, big goal. And it was to hit 10K. By the grace of God, y'all, we're at 20. So thank you for following me. I'm like, come on. We've got to be intentional, though, with setting these goals, or else we'll be marching towards what we don't even know. Anyhow, Jess, thank you so much for all of your wisdom. I know that there's so much, I call it golden nuggets, that you've shared on this episode that people will run with. And hopefully it's not something that's just a moment for them, but I pray that it's a lifestyle for them. There's a question that I ask every single guest on the show, and that is, what does joy mean to you?
Whoa. You sent me the questions and I didn't look at them because I didn't have time. And I was like, oh, I'm good on the fly. I always come up with great answers. So the question is, what does joy mean to you?
Mm-hmm.
I think joy is how for me, how God wants us to live our lives. I think for me, it's this incredible power that we can step into if we have the courage to do it differently. And joy means for me the freedom and the abundance to live a life that you were called to do. And I think we get stuck in it looking a certain way or being a certain way. And I think what I've found is like joy is in the unexpected. Joy is in it being different. Joy doesn't have to be cookie cutter, and what is for me won't be for you. but I think it's like this posture of your heart. And like you said, I think it's this corrective lens that even when everything is hard and crazy and yucky, and it feels like you just can't catch a break and you get another low blow, joy is the corrective lens that shows me all the blessings, all the goodness, all the grace that is right there that I have access to, that I don't want to waste. I don't want to wish away the moments. I don't know if that makes any sense, but joy for me is just like, it's what I want to be remembered for. I want people to be like, she was a crazy lady that sang on the trolley bus and didn't care what others think. She was the lady that like went all in and like was so outrageous. And I know I'm not everyone's flavor, but it was like, I want people to just see like, oh man, she just lived her life fully. Like that's a powerful place to be. And so that's what I hope I'm remembered for. It's what I hope my kids will know my legacy for. And I feel really blessed to have come as far as I've come. And that I've been asked to speak on joy. Like that is what God's like, this is your thing, go do it. And not only do I get to do it, but I get to be it. And gosh, it feels so dang good.
Come on. That is joy, friends. That is so good, Jess. Thank you for sharing that. I know the people are like, hold on. I know you're Cece's mentor, but like, I need me some. I don't know if you're still taking on coaching clients, but that, and then also, will you just share like, how in the heck can we show up for you? Where can we plug in? How could we support you and just like learn more from you?
Okay, first off, if anyone does have access to Justin Timberlake, that is the number one
Yes.
request.
When is the
Please.
birthday? When's
It's
Lewis's birthday?
May 25th. It's on his birthday this year. So I was like, hey, Justin, it's perfect. And his tour dates, he has like a full week off. And I was like, you were free and available. Like, so yeah, so I mean, sharing about my son's birthday party, the work that we do for the foundation, I mean, prayers. I am battling darkness every day. Your ideas are stupid, you're not good enough, you could do better. This, why are you doing this? You suck at this. Like I do battle that every day. And so I think prayers just for powerful, clear thoughts and for the courage and the boldness to show up. I have been in a season of some shifts just with friendships and with my business and as I grow and level up. And some of that's really hard. And so, we're just like, gosh, I don't know how I got through it. It's usually the power of prayer. People just like that you don't even know who know you are like, hey, just lifting you up. I would say that for sure. I invite you to follow me on Instagram. I wrote this down. That's what I was writing right at the beginning of the podcast. It says your Instagram is a billboard for joy. Because sometimes, like, we're like, why do I show up on here? What's the purpose of this platform? And I love Instagram. It has been an incredible source of connection and community and all these abundant blessings. But I mean, follow me there, the Jessica Janzen. You can buy a copy of my book and then stay tuned. There are a bunch of incredible things that we've got coming up, some virtual stuff that we're going to be doing. And then who knows, maybe I'll be speaking in a city near you, but I'm available for keynotes. And then I do some one-on-one coaching. I only have room for a few more clients, but I'm happy to do that. And I'm looking at a way of how do we make it even more accessible so more people can access some of the goodness that we all just need a kick in the butt and a spot that we can be real and get a reset and a refresh. So I would appreciate all of those, any of those, even the hearts, comments, likes, shares. It all matters. It all has a difference. Someone even just sending you a little note of encouragement that can shift everything in somebody's day. So those are all the ways that you can show up. And I just want to say, Cece, it's been an incredible honor to be able to work together. And I do feel like God had our paths cross several ways. And what I will say is one of the things I hope I'm remembered for is that I gave generously and expected nothing because people have been good and generous to me. And I talk about it from stage. I long to be the lady that can write the check for 10 grand without even blinking. And the check won't bounce and it will actually go through. And I'm not there yet. And so I just want to encourage whoever is on the end of this and you're still listening is use what you have where you're at with what you got. And it might look differently than how you thought it, but it still matters and it still has value and impact and can make a difference. So I long for the days I can write the checks, but in this moment, there's other ways I can show up, like giving of my time or of my treasure, of my talent. And so I just want to encourage you, stop playing small, take up some space and just give with what you got. You have breath in your lungs and a beating heart and you're far from done. And so leaning into those lessons have catapulted me into a new level that I'm just so grateful for.
Jess, thank you so, so much for all of that. Y'all, I'll drop specific links in the show notes below. But thank you so much, Jess, for being here. Okay, can we just take a moment and just like give all the snaps to Jess for absolutely bringing the heat? I mean, there were a million golden nuggets that she shared with us, and I hope that your heart is just overflowing by hearing her voice. I mean, the woman speaks with conviction, and when she is in the room, you just feel something. And I believe that the Holy Spirit is just working through her in such a profound way, and it's just so evident in her life and how she loves and how she lives. And one of my favorite things about this episode is that she shares one of the hardest, if not the hardest thing that she has ever walked through. And yet you feel an amount of joy through the conversation that you can't quite fully wrap your mind around. And I think that is the evidence of Jesus, honestly, and the joy of the Lord. Like, it's not ours. And it's so cool that through her life and through her story, she's just bringing more people in to understand joy in new levels. And so, friends, if you've not yet grabbed her book, Bring the Joy, I finished reading it at the top of this year, and it is so powerful. It goes into depth with the different stories that she slightly touched on throughout this episode. And I just know you'll be encouraged by it. If you are honestly thinking of someone right now who can be encouraged in joy, this would be the perfect gift to give them too. It's called Bring the Joy by Jessica Janzen. Go to her website. I'll link everything in the show notes so you can grab that. But friends, I hope that you just feel so encouraged. And I hope that your joy cup is just like runneth over today. Thank you so much for listening all the way through. If there's a certain part of this episode that you want to hear more about, or you want to be an entirely different episode, or heck, do we want Jess back for round 2? Let me know. Shoot me a text at 615-813-4813, and you can join the Joy Corner. The Joy Corner is my weekly newsletter by going to the show notes or going to that'sjoypodcast.com. If you're not following me yet on social, you can do that by following me at CCALBONERO on Instagram and on TikTok, and you can follow That's Joy the Podcast. And don't forget to follow Jessica Janzen too, and she's just at Jessica Janzen. If you've not yet taken a second to subscribe, rate, and leave a review for That's Joy, friends, that is the biggest way that you can help us grow this platform and grow all that God's doing through this vessel that is That's Joy. So take 2 minutes, go to Apple, hit that subscribe button, drop a 5 stars, write a little review, and then head on over to Spotify, hit follow, drop a 5 stars, and know that I am giving you a hug all the way from Nashville for doing that. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And I'll never leave an episode without saying, if you have even the smallest desire to meet the creator of the universe, or if you've already been saved but you're not really free, I want to invite you to sit at the table of plenty with me and so many others. I'm telling you, there's abundance here. There's an overflow here, and there's so much joy here. I'm here to tell you that God is for you. All you have to do is invite him into your heart right now. He's waiting for you. He wants to meet with you. And friend, I'm so proud of you. If you just made this decision, I'd love to know you. Shoot me a text to that number in the show notes so I could pray for you. I love you. God loves you. Jess loves you too. And until next time, I'll talk to y'all next time. Thank you so, so much for being here.